Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello students. In this video, I'll take up the next chapter of biology, that is diversity in living organisms. You must have noticed there is a huge variety of living organisms living on Earth. You must have seen many of them yourselves. On one hand, we have microscopic organisms which are unicellular like bacteria, amoeba, paramecium. And on the other hand, we have multicellular organisms which includes plants, animals, even human beings. Even within the plants, if you see, we have tiny grasses and herbs. And then on the other hand, we have huge tall trees which live for hundreds of years. Even within the animals, there is a large variety, from the tiny little insects, ants, mosquitoes, to the huge elephants and blue whales and even humans. So you see there is a huge variety of living organisms living on Earth. This is what we call as biodiversity. All right, so this chapter basically deals with studying about the different types of organisms. So it is very difficult to study the characteristic features of each living organism. So what scientists have done is they have divided it into certain groups and subgroups. So we study the features of particular groups which include certain number of organisms. So this dividing them into groups makes the study very easy and systematic. So in this chapter, diversity in living organisms, we'll see how we can classify living organisms into different groups and what are the basic features of each group of organisms. So let's study. Okay, so let's start this chapter. First is, what is biodiversity? It means that the variety of living organisms present on a particular region. There are numerous types of organisms on Earth which differ from one another in various ways, like in external form, how do they appear, or internal structure. So some of them have some cellular differentiation, some do not have cellular differentiation. Like that, internally how they differ from each other. Then one major difference is in the mode of nutrition. Some organisms are autotrophic, others are heterotrophic. Even within heterotrophic, there is a wide variety of mode of nutrition. Then habitat, the place where they live. So depending upon this, we will categorize the organisms. Next is the taxonomy. Okay, taxonomy is a branch of biology which deals with identification, nomenclature, and classification of organisms. So the known organisms, all the organisms which are known to the scientists, they are identified, they are given scientific names, and then depending upon their features, they are classified into groups. This branch of biology is called taxonomy, and Carolus Linnaeus is called the father of taxonomy. So what is the basis of classification? How do we divide them into groups and subgroups? So the classification is division of organisms on the basis of their characteristics or the features. So they are divided into groups and subgroups. Characteristics are either the forms of organisms or the functions performed by them. Forms, how do they appear from the external features, and functions or their behaviors, all these things they combine together to form the characteristics. So scientists have to divide which characteristics are more important to divide the organisms into groups, and those organisms which have similar features, they'll be grouped together. So organisms which differ in the form and structure or the mode of living, and hence based on their similarities and dissimilarities, they are grouped into same or different groups. Next question arises, what is the importance of classification? The grouping of related organisms help us in studying them more systematically. So what happens, if I just told you there are thousands and thousands of types of living organisms. So it is practically impossible to study the characteristic features of each organism separately. So this grouping together makes the study more systematic and easier. It also helps us to study how organisms have evolved. Okay, the classification is closely related to study of evolution. Evolution means how the changes are get accumulated. You must have heard that the ancestors of humans are apes. So apes, certain number of animals, there were certain changes over millions of years, and these changes slowly gathered together, accumulated to give rise to new species, which are humans. So this way, classification actually helps us to study the evolution. It also helps us to understand the interrelationship between different groups. We can see what two groups have in common and how they are different. So it helps us to interrelate between them. And it also forms a basis for other biological sciences, other fields of biology like biogeography, biotechnology. Classification helps in those branches also. Next, let us study some major characteristics or the features which are considered for classification of our organism. First is the type of cellular organization. It is the basic and the most important characteristic which scientists consider to classify the organism. This is the first step. According to the types of cellular organization, cell can be either prokaryotic or eukaryotic. You have studied this in the chapter Cell. Prokaryotic cells are those which do not have a well-defined nucleus. They do not have membrane-bound nucleus and other cell organelles. On the other hand, eukaryotic cells, they are complete cells with well-defined nucleus. So, first of all, the organisms, they are divided into two categories. Either they are prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Now, among them, then they are further divided into subgroups depending upon their body organization, whether they are unicellular or they are multicellular. Within eukaryotic, some organisms might be unicellular like amoeba, while other might be multicellular like humans or plants or birds. Right? So unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms, which depends upon number of cells in their structure. The third type of most important characteristic is the mode of obtaining food or the mode of nutrition. So autotrophs are those which can make their own food with the help of photosynthesis. They contain the green color pigment, that is chlorophyll. So all the green plants and blue-green algae fall under this category, the autotrophs, while those which cannot make their own food, they are categorized as heterotroph. They depend directly or indirectly on autotrophs to obtain the food. So these three are the major characteristics which are used for classification. The cellular organization, that is prokaryotic or eukaryotic, then body organization, that is whether they are unicellular or multicellular, and third is mode of obtaining food, that is whether they are autotrophic or heterotrophic. Right. So with this you can understand like what makes an amoeba so different from any other multicellular like a worm or an insect. It is that their amoeba is unicellular, while the other organisms which I just mentioned, they are multicellular. What makes amoeba different from bacteria? So bacteria is prokaryotic while amoeba is eukaryotic. So these are the main characteristics which we use to divide different organisms into different groups.